All right, so let's just redo what we did on our two previous meetings, right? So some people were not there, some people were there, but they're not able to follow because either they didn't have Unity installed or we had some kind of error. So let's just replicate what we did. Go to Unity and just create a project, a new project. Make sure you select 3D project, and then you're gonna end up in a screen that may look like this. If not, that's not a problem. We just have to make sure we know where some windows are, and we're gonna be using the hierarchy window a lot, the assets window, this one here, the inspector, right, and also the game window. So sometimes it comes with another screen, maybe the asset store, but make sure you select game and not animator but scene, right? All right, so let's start this tutorial so that you can learn some basic things about Unity, or just review if you already know. So first thing, move your mouse to the hierarchy window, right click, and 3D object, create a cube. So we created a cube, the hierarchy window shows it here, the scene shows it here, and we have a default camera over here, and the camera is showing our cube here on the game screen, right? So select the cube again. You can see that we can move it here, right? Or here, or on the Y axis here. All right. It doesn't matter the position of it now. If it's not showing for you, just go here to position, select 0, 0, 0. That should be default, and it's going to be on your screen. All right, let's right click on our cube and rename it to floor, because this is going to be our floor, right? Okay, but it's too small to be a floor, so select floor here on the hierarchy window, move to the inspector window, and when you see here scale, let's change the X to 50. 50 should be enough. Y can be 1, we don't need it any thicker than that, and Z also 50. All right, so now you have a floor. It's important that if you click on floor and look here on the inspector window, we can see that we have a game object named floor, and it has many different components. It has a mesh rendered component, and that's Unity rendering the object so it can be seen by the player. If we uncheck this, the object disappears, but the object is still there, it's just not being rendered, right? So being displayed to the player is just one component the object has. The object comes with a box collider. That means if I put something here that has a collider, it's not going to go through the floor, it's going to collide. And it has a default material. All right, now we want this to look different. We don't want it to be white because this makes it hard for us to see. So move the mouse to the assets window, right click, create, and look for material like this. So we create, we can give it a name. We're gonna call it floor underscore mat because it's the material for the floor. All right, and also the floor, that's the material selected here on the assets. We go to the inspector window and you can change the color clicking here. So as is the floor, I'm gonna put a shade of green, right? All right, this is the color I want. Now I have the material, and how do I add it to the game object floor? There are two ways to do this. You can just grab the material and drag it to the floor here, right? Or you can attach it using the hierarchy window. For now, I'm just going to drop it here, and that's it. If you click on the floor, you see that the material is now the floor mat. We just added to it. It's one component. All right, so go to hierarchy window. Make sure you don't have any object selected, because if you create an object with another one selected, the new object is going to be a child of the previous object, the selected object. We don't want that. So make sure that nothing's selected. Right click, create a 3D object, create a cube, right click on it, rename. We're gonna call it player. So this is going to be our player. right? And once you create it, you see that we're not able to see it, but select it and let's move the position, the Y, to something like 4. All right, this way we're able to see it here because it's not occupying the same position. All right, so now we can see our player, right? Let's also create a material for the player. So you move the mouse to the assets window, right click, create material. We're gonna call it player underscore mat, and we're gonna give it a color, right? I'm gonna give it the color blue. All right, and again, I can just drop it here, or I can drop it on the hierarchy window. These two screens, they are the same thing. These just list the objects that are here. This is just a representation of the objects we have in the game, right? All right, so now if we go ahead and hit play, nothing happens, right? And this is because there's no physics operating here. There's not a single component telling the objects to move or anything like that, right? Of course, our object is floating over there and there's no gravity, so we won't actually fall. So close the game. It's very important that you close the game because changes we do while the game is running won't be saved. So make sure that when you're doing something to the game or adding components and stuff, the game is not selected, unless you're just testing something and you want to change and see the effects, right? But it won't be saved. All right, so close the game. Now we want gravity to operate here. How do we do that? We select our player, we go to the inspector window, we scroll down until this button here, add component, click on it, and it might look something like this to you. Just type rigid, right? And we're gonna add a rigid body, not the 2D one, but this first one here. So rigid body. All right, so now our object has a mesh renderer, a box collider, and has a component called rigid body that basically tells Unity that it is a physical object and should react to gravity, should be treated as a physical object. That's checked here. So if you hit play now, the object falls, right? Because now there's gravity operating there. And because both the cube and the floor have box collider, they won't go through each other, right? If you remove that, our cube just fall like this. All right, so close the game, make sure you have our box collider again, right? Now we want to move this cube. That was the first thing we did there. So we want to get input from the user and move this object. How do we do that? All right, to do that, we need to write some code. So move the mouse to the assets window, like there, right click, create, and we are going to create a C# script. So click on C# script, and it offers you the opportunity to name this object. We're gonna name it something like movement, and hit enter. So our script was created, and now we need to open it. You can just hit enter again or double click, and it's going to open it for you. Now, Unity uses as a standard Visual Studio, but it also uses mono development. It's going to open the script for you in either one of these. If you decide to go with Visual Studio, it may ask you to have a Microsoft account, so you may need to create a Hotmail or Outlook account before coming to actually see this part here. So either one is fine, it doesn't matter, right? So once you get to this part, we're gonna have here a basic C# script where we are saying that we're using Unity Engine. We have our class, the name of our class is movement. It's the same name of the script we created. And we have here two functions, the standard functions start and update. So start is used to initialize object. It's read by the game when we initialize the game. And update, it's read or updated by the system every single frame of the game. Usually the standard is 30 frames per second. So if you want to move our player, it's not something we do just us, it's something that we need to do and update every single frame. So here is where you're going to write most of the code. But before writing code here, we need to create some variables. So let's just go here. I'm going to delete this comment. We don't need it. And we are going to start creating two variables. The first variable, we're going to call it public. And it's public because we want to access it from outside the script, so it has to be public. Rigidbody, and we're gonna call it player. In C#, every statement has to end in a semicolon, so make sure that we have public, rigidbody, player. Rigidbody has to be capitalized, or you're gonna have errors, right? All right. Hit enter. We're going to create one more variable. We're going to call it public. And it's a float variable. That means it's a decimal number. And we're going to call it speed. So that's the variable we need. Just going to hit enter again so that I can see them here. So we have a rigid body. We named it player. And we have a public float. We name it speed, right? Now on the update, right, we just click here, we can write code here. If you prefer to use the traditional one that is like this, no problem, you can decide. I'm gonna use this one because it's I think it's better for me to see the code. So update, we want to get input from the user. How do we do that? We're gonna do that using a if statement. So write if, open and close parentheses. If you're using Visual Studio, it does that automatically for you. As soon as you create one, it closes. And inside, you're gonna evoke a function called input. So input dot get key, open and close parentheses again, and between quotation marks, you're gonna have the key we wanna get, and we want to get W because we're gonna start moving our object forward. So traditionally in games, that's the W function. So hit enter, make sure that you have exactly this format for the if statement. It's one of them. There are other ways we can do it, but I'm gonna do this one because it's the standard one. So make sure you have it like this. And now, okay, so when our player hit W, what happens? Well, we want to move that object. To do that, we need to call the object. So we named our rigid body player here, so it's going to be player dot, and we want to add force to it. So add force. The function add force looks like this. Let's close with semicolon so that we don't forget it. So this is what the function look like. We have a function that add the force to a rigid body, and here we have the three axes, the X, the Y, and the Z. Well, we want to move our object forward here. So we want to change the Z, right? So to change the Z, we need to move not this one here because this is the X, as you can see there, but we want to move this one here, right? So this is the one we want to change. As you can see, it goes forward, it comes backwards. So this is the one we want to change. So to move forward our object, this is going to be 0, this is going to be 0, but I need to change this. Now, we could just add 5 here and it would work, but 5, it's a big number for an integer, right? So if you do that, Unity is going to understand that you want to add 5 to the axis of that object every single frame, because that's what update do. That's not what we want. So we're going to use our variable speed so that we can have control of that better. And we don't want that to happen every single frame, but per second, because that's much easier for us to control. So to do that, we're going to multiply using the star the speed to a function called time dot delta time. Oh, sorry, spell it right. All right. So player add force 0, 0, speed times time delta time. Well, let's save this script. You can either click here or hit Ctrl S. And if you go ahead now and hit play, nothing's going to happen. Just the gravity that we added before. So why? Why is it not going to happen? Well, because although we have created a variable here called player, we didn't tell Unity that the player we want to move is this cube here. And we haven't even attached the script to the object. So first, we select the script here, and we have to attach this script to the object we want to move. So that's the player. All right, and then if you click here, the script is just one more component this object has. And because we created these two variables, Rigidbody player and the float speed, as public, we can see them here, and we can change them just using Unity Engine, where we don't have to go back to our script and code. Now, the speed is set to 0. That's not good. We're going to change it to something like 500. Remember, it's float, not integers. And we have a variable player here, right? We have to tell the engine which is the player, which is the rigid body we want to move, and that's our player. So we have to drag our player and put it here. That's one of the ways to do it. We're gonna see how to do that through code later, but for now we can do this, right? But now I've just done a mistake. I told you that changes shouldn't be done while the game is running. And let me close the game, and you're gonna see what happens. Everything I did was not saved, right? Because you cannot do that. So make sure you check that. So select the player again, and I'm gonna put the script. I'm gonna set the speed to 500, and I'm gonna drag my player here. All right. Now, if I hit enter, I should be able to move this character. Let's see. All right, let me move the camera a bit. Yeah, no, here. Yeah, okay. So, it's very important that you click on the game window before trying to move your character, because if I click here and try to move it, it won't work. So you have to click on the game window and then hit W, and it works, right? Not in a good way, but it works. Oh, it fell. All right. So close the game, go back to the game, go back to the script, and all right, so now we can move our object forward. How do we move it backwards? All right, let's copy this and let's paste it here. Well, to move it backwards, you just have to add a negative here, and it's not W, but it is S. Right? If you prefer to use the arrows, that's okay, no problem. So WS, it's negative, so it should move our object backwards. Let's see if that works. So I move forward, I move backwards. All right, it works. Now, we don't want the object to move like this. Why is it doing that? Well, it's a rigid body, so there's a lot of friction, right? But we don't want all the friction because we want the object to slide through the floor, right? That's a better behavior. So close the game, move your mouse to the assets window, right click, create, and create a physics material this time. So we're gonna create a physics material. I'm gonna call it slippery so that I can easily remember what this component here does. All right, and then on the inspector window, you're gonna see that the dynamic friction is set to be 0 and 6. We're gonna change it to 0 and 3. The static friction, I'm gonna also change it to 0 and 3, and friction combined, I'm gonna send it to minimum. All right, it should save automatically, don't worry. But now, again, it's a component. We have to add it to the object we want to have this property. So this is the floor. So you can just drop it here on the floor or use the hierarchy window over here. Now, it seems that nothing happened, right? And if you click on floor and look for, there's not a component called slippery. But if you look inside the box collider material, you see that it was added here, right? So now when we try to play the game, we should have less friction and our object should move smoothly. All right, that's much better, right? Now let's close the game again. Let's go to the script, and all right, I can move the object forward and backwards, but now how do I move it sideways? Copy the script, paste it here. The key, okay, let's start with the right side. So let's get the key D. If this is the X, this is the Y, this is the Z. This time I don't want to move it on the Z axis, right? So this is going to be 0. I want to move it Y, no, I don't want it to go up. So to move it sideways, the force should be applied on this axis. So again, speed times time dot delta time. So player add force, speed times time delta time. Okay, Control S, go back to Unity and check if it works. And I can move it forward, backwards, and sideways like this. Right. Close it here. Go back to the script. Copy it. Well, right now you know what to do, right? So to move it to the left side, I'm gonna have to get not D, but A, and it's going to be negative speed times time dot delta time. Save the script. Go back to Unity. Hit play. Oh, it's loading here, so you have to wait this, right? Oh, okay, once that is done, you can hit play. And now you should be able to control the object on 3 axes, right? Exactly like this. I can go forward, backwards, to the right, to the left, and so on. All right, very good. So now we can control our character. This is it for now. We don't need anything else here. This video is already too long, but there's one more thing I want to show you here. So last class we had a problem. I haven't seen it happen, that's why I was not able to fix it, but let's create another script here. So you move your mouse to the assets, right click, create C# script, and now okay, you hit enter and you created a script, and Unity gives it a standard name. The name is new behavior script, but let's suppose I want to change it, and then I click right click on it, rename. Let's call it, for example, movement 2. All right, so now I changed the name to movement 2. But the problem is that if you open this script, you're gonna see that the name of the class is still the old name of the script, so new behavior script. So we have one name here, but the name of the class is different than the name of the script, and they have to be the same. So when I try to attach this to an object, I'm gonna get that error, right? Can't add this because it needs to be the same. It needs to derive from one behavior. So how to fix that? Well, you go there and you have to change the name of the class to the name of the file. In our case, that's movement 2. Right? Control S to save. Now let's see if we can attach this to the object, and I go there. Oh, sorry, I have to wait. If load, all right. Now I go there and click on player, and you can see that the script was attached here successfully. Well, now I don't want this second script here, so I'm gonna just click here, remove component, and I'm gonna select it here and delete. All right, so on our next meeting, I'll try and show you how we can create the camera and how we can actually make the camera follow the player. So as we move here, we're gonna have the camera following our player, and if we have time, we're gonna go through some collisions, right, and how we can detect collisions between different objects we are going to put here, right? Now there's one last thing to talk about. Let's go back to our script, not this one here, but the old one, this one. So we created our movement script here, it works, but there are two problems with this script. First is that we are adding forces to objects, and the best practice is not to do that inside the update function. If we are going to add force, Unity recommends we do that inside a function called fixed update. And fixed update is better. It calculates physics interactions much better than update. So if you are going to use the physical system and gravity and add forces, you should do this inside fixed update, not update. But doing this, we get another problem because update is read every single frame. Fixed update is just read when there's physical interaction, so that could make we lose some input from the user. Not for the game we're working here, this script works fine, you don't have to worry about it, but for more complicated games that could happen. So ideally, we would get input from the user inside update and apply the forces inside fixed update. Later, we can revisit this code and do that, but for now, it's okay, we don't have to worry about it. All right, so this is it for now.